We have all been told a lie. What if I told you that motivation isn't always the best? We have always been told that motivation is the key to success. But what you don't think about is that if you push yourself too fast, too hard, that you could end up burning yourself out, frustrating yourself, and even leading to failure. We live in a world where it's a hustle culture. I cannot tell you the amount of videos that come through my social media feeds that promote this grinding culture, that you have to be really busting your tail all the time in order to be successful. But what you don't understand is that can lead to severe burnout and frustration, and it is not a healthy state of mind. I recently saw this video of this guy who supposedly is hacking the system, where he basically works 3 days in a given day. He works like 3 short stints and basically is telling everybody around him that he's beating them by a mile just because he's been able to work 21 days in a given 7-day work week. It's not a healthy way of living. Don't get me wrong. Like, there are times where I tend to work a little bit too much, but it is not sustainable. I know when I need to take breaks, and I'm sure I could do this 3-day work day probably about for a week until I started to really start to feel some strain. And there may be people that have a higher degree of motivation that could do it for a little bit longer. It's just not for everybody. Not to mention, there is this focus now on quantity over quality. I get it. When you are more productive, there is a potential where things could be increased, right? Sales, profits, all that stuff. But what you don't think about is how sustainable it is. I can run a half mile in a very short amount of time. But that doesn't mean that I could run 21 miles in a given amount of time. You don't get to take that short stint and then multiply it by X amount of time or X amount of people and say, if you did this, you could result in a higher productivity. It just doesn't work that way. It would be nice if it did, but let's just be honest. That's just not something that's sustainable. And I've seen a lot of videos out there that show these people really hustling in their jobs and doing some amazing things. And don't get me wrong, they're great. They look really cool. But at the end of the day, do I expect them, or would I expect them to be doing that same thing every single day, every single minute? No, it's not a sustainable practice. And that's the thing that I want to look at, is how do we get to sustainability, not just speed? Not to mention, it gets people into this mentality of looking at how much we're doing instead of looking at how well we're doing it. In fact, there's this Venn diagram out there for fast, good, and cheap that I think really sums it up really nicely. There are things that you are able to accomplish when looking at this Venn diagram, but when you look at intersecting all three, it is just rarely a possibility. Some might say it's impossible. I wouldn't necessarily say anything's impossible, but it is a very rare occurrence. And I'm not saying that motivation isn't worth it. Motivation is a good thing. There are lots of situations where I have videos or songs, things that really kind of get me pumped up. They're great. I appreciate them. There's nothing wrong with that. But they are good for short bursts of energy. They are not there to push me through all of the crap that's out there. In fact, that's where discipline comes in. And I'm going to talk a little bit about discipline a little bit later in the video, but discipline is the thing that you use when motivation has worn off. And it's tough. We see this all over the place. Think about New Year's resolutions, right? Seems to happen every year. We come to January 1st, we think about what do we want to change? And there's tons of people that go out and want to change all sorts of different things. I think when you look at gyms, the first 2 weeks of the year, gyms are probably pretty packed. But the problem is that we live in this instant gratification society now, to where if we don't see those results immediately, we tend to lose interest. In fact, most sustainable goals or most sustainable achievements aren't seen immediately. They use the analogy of pulling off just a square of toilet paper, right? If you just pulled off a square of toilet paper, you wouldn't see the difference. But if you did that day over day over day, you would see the roll of toilet paper start to go down. That is a lot of what goal setting is and making your achievements come to life. It is not about just looking at that one square. It is looking at that one square over time. And trust me, I get it. When you get that dopamine hit, when that motivation sets in, whew, man, it feels good. I get it. I have a playlist just with songs in it to really get me hyped up. But that's what it does. It gets me hyped up a lot of times for maybe just a short term. But that's the thing, is that it is a short-term gain. It does not give you the things that you need in order to have longer sustained results. So when you're using this motivation, just be wise with what it's doing for you and your mental state. And think about the pressure you are under to always try to improve. Again, I'm not saying don't always try to improve. I think being able to improve yourself is very important, but don't put so much pressure onto yourself. How many of you out there have heard the saying, practice makes perfect, right? Guess what? Not all the time. Practice will make you better, but it will not always make you perfect. In fact, what is perfect? I don't know of too many things that are perfect. Yes, I know there's a lot of people out there that are probably saying there's a perfect sandwich, there's a perfect movie, there's perfect. Yes, there are things that are subjective in our own minds that we feel is perfect. But when we're thinking about improving ourselves, you're never at a place where it's like, I'm done. I've learned all that I possibly can learn, and I don't need to learn anymore. And so you have to be careful with that, because when you think about your own perfectionism, that can be a very dangerous place to be in. Because what happens is you tend to self-correct or overcorrect in a lot of situations where nothing is ever good enough for you. And when nothing is ever good enough for you, when something goes wrong or when it doesn't go maybe your way or what you expected, you start to feel anxious, and that self-doubt can set in. And from that can come a lot of dissatisfaction, and you could lose interest altogether. And I talked about an instant gratification society that we live in. We also live in this comparison culture where we are constantly comparing ourselves to other people around us. And that is dangerous because, one, we don't know what's going on in somebody else's life to afford them the things that have got them to where they are. Not only that, but there are natural skills that exist in people. I'm not saying that there are people out there that are just naturally gifted to do stuff, but when you think about drummers or musicians, things of that nature, I can't play the drums. I can't. But there are several people out there that I know that were gifted in the sense that it just comes more natural to them. And they may not have to practice nearly as much. And so you see somebody that goes out there and after a month of playing with a guitar or a month of drumming, they're just unbelievably great. But then you're sitting there doing it day after day after day, not seeing any results, only to put yourself into this sense of failure, and you don't want to do it anymore. So stop comparing yourselves to others. I think it is fine to put yourself into a place where you look up to people, and I think that's a great place to be in, because I think that starts to open up lanes of communication where you can reach out to people to say, hey, what really worked out well for you? What benefited you on your journey, so that maybe I can learn from it. Now, understand that their journey may have other things that aren't a possibility for you, and so you have to be aware of that. Or maybe the things that worked out well for them, you've tried before and it didn't work out well. That's okay. You can use this as motivation or drive to look for other avenues to better yourself. Just be very cautious when you're in this comparison state of mind. Doing so can put you in this state of inadequacy, and I don't want anyone to be in that state of mind. It is just not a healthy place to be. I've talked a lot about burnout and frustration, anxiety, things of that nature. These are those areas that you have to be very cautious of because they can really take a toll on your mental health. Not to mention, it's counterproductive when you get into these states of minds or these perfection states or comparison states. It's not letting you be productive. It's not pushing you forward. It's holding you back. And not only that, but it can take months, even years to recover from. Obsessions with motivation can oftentimes lead to neglect of your own health, your relationships, your downtime. Downtime is absolutely an important piece to your own success. You need to be able to take a break, take a step back. When I'm looking at my own design or when I'm trying to come up with ideas, if I sit and stare at a screen, I can feel myself getting more and more frustrated. And that's when I know it's time to just close things down, take a step away, maybe take a walk, maybe go just listen to some music, read a book, something to get my mind off of it. Because what I'm doing is I'm allowing my mind to come to a neutral state so that I can potentially look back and see what areas I can progress in. And with motivation, there has to be some direction. There is a big difference between being busy and being productive. A lot of times we put ourselves into this state of mind where we think if we're doing, we're actually accomplishing. And that's not the case at all. It's hard sometimes to put yourself into a state where you can just relax and sit and think. This happens to me quite a bit. When I'm eating dinner, I'm a very fast eater. And when I finish before my family, I tend to get up and start cleaning dishes and start putting stuff away and start moving things around, because I get into this state of mind where I just can't sit and enjoy the company. And I found myself getting more frustrated because I don't do that. And it is a very hard thing to get over. And it's about being able to read the situation and understand that just because things aren't being accomplished doesn't mean you're not being productive. When we think about the saying, it takes about 21 days to form a good habit, right? Wrong. It's funny. That is actually a myth. And I remember sitting in a meeting saying something about it takes X amount of days to form a habit. And one of my counterparts was looking at me and he goes, that's actually a myth, right? And I was like, really? It's a myth? I've always been told that 21 days it takes to form a habit. No, it doesn't mean that at all. In fact, that was from a paper that was published back in 1960, where they were talking about how people that were getting physical appearance changes like plastic surgery, and it takes about 21 days for them to recognize themselves differently. And so they use that to apply to other avenues of the business, when realistically it has nothing to do with it. In fact, it's the discipline that you have that you need in order to see success in those habits. So when you think about it, you need both. The motivation is there to get you fired up, to get you pumped up, get you inspired, get you working really hard. But the discipline is there to really push you through it. It allows you to set yourself up the consistency that you need in order to be successful. And you need to remain disciplined as much as possible. It may be tough at times, but looking into that discipline, you will see the success that you need in order to achieve your goals. Finally, motivation can be tremendous when it comes to leadership, but you have to be careful, because a constant focus and motivation can unintentionally lead to a very toxic work environment. You get this pressure to always be on, always be trying to motivate your teams, when realistically it's not motivation that your team needs in order to be productive, in order to be inspired. It's a balance of motivation with support. This pressure to always be on can actually lead teams feeling more drained. And by doing so, it actually lowers morale. It can cause turnover as well. And you could even potentially see some leaders start setting unrealistic expectations that are fueled by their own motivation. And it pushes the people beyond their limits. And it's not to say that's not a bad thing. There are times where we may have to work harder, and there's nothing wrong with that. But leaders need to understand that that result or that pressure is not sustainable. And by doing so, you will actually end up burning your people out. It reminds me of the book Unreasonable Hospitality by Will Guidara. And in the book, he talks about being the number one restaurant and wanting this for himself and his team. But him and his partner didn't go back to his team and say, this is what we're going to do. In fact, they went back and they asked them, is this something that we all want? And they got agreement on it. And by doing so, it allowed them to grow through any potential obstacles that existed and push through to the success that they wanted to see. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you were able to take away some good pointers when it comes to motivation. Like I said, motivation isn't a detriment to our own well-being, but it has some potential downfalls that we have to be cautious of. I'd love to hear from you. What were some of your experiences, maybe that you felt burnout from being too overly motivated? What were some of the things that you did to kind of push through it? And maybe what were some of your learnings that would help you out in the future? Thanks again, and don't forget to hit that like and subscribe. Remember, elevating yourself to the next level starts with just a single step. Take that step today. We'll see you next time.